I never imagined that the place where I nearly lost my life would be the same place where my own family tried to erase it. When I woke up in that hospital bed, with tubes in my arms and machines breathing for me, I honestly believed the worst was over. I was wrong. Because while I was fighting to stay alive, someone else was signing my life away. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 63 years old. And this is the story of how one missing signature saved everything I worked my entire life for. Before I begin, let me ask you something. If you enjoy real stories about family, betrayal, and justice, take a second to subscribe to this channel. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, city or country, and whether you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. Sometimes, knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Now let me take you back. That land wasn't just land. It was 87 acres of red soil and stubborn weeds, passed down from my father and his father before him. I learned to walk there. I learned to work there. I buried my parents under an old oak tree at the edge of it. I never got rich from it. But it was mine. And it was supposed to stay that way. Then, one morning I collapsed. They told me later it was a stroke, followed by complications. All I remember is a burning pain in my chest and my sister's voice yelling my name as the room went dark. When I woke up, days had passed. I couldn't speak properly. My right hand barely moved. Doctors leaned over me, explaining things slowly, like I was a child. They said I was lucky to be alive. My family filled the room after that. My younger brother Mark. His wife Elaine. My niece. People smiling too much, asking too many questions. How are you feeling, Rob? Do you recognize us? Doctor says you'll need rest, lots of rest. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my family. A week later, paperwork started appearing. Forms. Documents. Folders stacked neatly on the small hospital table. Elaine explained everything with a soft voice. Just routine things, she said. Insurance. Temporary authority. Stuff we need while you recover. Mark stood behind her, nodding. I tried to read the papers, but the words wouldn't stay still. My head throbbed. My vision blurred. They handed me a pen. I remember this part clearly. My hand shook. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Something didn't feel right. I asked for time. Elaine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, she said. No rush. The next day, the papers were back. And the day after that. Every time, a little more pressure. A little more urgency. You don't want bills piling up. We're just helping you. This is for your own good. Then one afternoon, a man I didn't recognize walked in. Suit. Briefcase. Too confident for a hospital room. I'm the attorney, he said like we'd met before. He slid a single page in front of me and pointed to a line. Just need your signature right here, Mr. Hale. I stared at that line. My heart started racing. I didn't know why, but every instinct in my body screamed no. So I shook my head. No, I croaked. My voice barely worked. The room went quiet. Mark laughed nervously. Elaine stepped in quickly. He's confused, she said. Maybe later. The man frowned, gathered his papers, and left. That was the last time anyone asked me to sign anything. Or so I thought. After 3 weeks, I was discharged. Weak. Slow. But alive. Mark insisted I stay with him until I recovered. I agreed. I had no energy to argue. A few days later, while sitting at the kitchen table, I overheard something. Elaine was on the phone in the other room. Yes. The land transfer should be finalized. Yes, he signed. No issues. My stomach dropped. That night, I asked Mark directly. What land transfer? He froze. Then sighed. Rob, don't stress yourself. It's done. We sold the property. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's not funny. I said. I never signed anything. Elaine walked in, arms crossed. You don't remember everything, she said calmly. You were medicated. That's when she said the words that changed everything. You signed it in the hospital. I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked to see the documents. They hesitated. Then finally handed me copies. There it was. My name. My signature. But it wasn't right. It looked like my handwriting. But it wasn't mine. And something else caught my eye. One page was missing. The final authorization page. The one I refused to sign. My heart started pounding. Because without that one signature, the sale wasn't legal. And suddenly, I understood why everyone had been acting strange. They thought they had everything. But they didn't. Not yet. I quietly packed my things that afternoon. Mark asked where I was going. Just to rest, I said. But I wasn't resting. I was preparing to fight. And what I uncovered next would expose every lie they told. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I knew one thing for sure. If I showed my hand too early, they'd close ranks and bury the truth deeper. So I did what I'd learned to do after 63 years of living. I stayed quiet. That evening I left Mark's house with a small duffel bag and a larger weight sitting in my chest. I told him I was going to a friend's place to rest and recover. That part wasn't a lie. My friend Walter had been my neighbor for over 20 years. Retired postal worker. Sharp mind. Didn't trust anybody who smiled too much. When he opened the door and saw me, his face dropped. Good Lord, Rob, you look like hell. Feel worse? I said, forcing a half smile. I didn't tell him everything at first. Just enough to stay the night. But around 2 in the morning, when sleep refused to come and my thoughts kept circling back to that forged signature, I finally told him the truth. Walter didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Just listened. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said something I'll never forget. Family steals cleaner than strangers. Because you never expect them to. The next morning, he drove me to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Angela Morris had a reputation in our county. She didn't talk much. Didn't promise miracles. But when she took a case, she didn't lose. She studied the documents silently. Every page. Every line. Then she looked up at me. You never signed the final authorization? No, I said. I refused. She nodded slowly. That refusal saved you. She explained it carefully. Without that final page, signed, witnessed, and notarized, the entire sale was vulnerable. Especially given my medical condition at the time. Stroke. Heavy medication. Limited capacity. If they pressured you while you were impaired, she said, that's not just fraud. That's exploitation. For the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I felt something other than fear. Hope. Angela filed an emergency injunction that same afternoon. Within 48 hours, the land transfer was frozen. No resale. No development. No money changing hands. That's when my phone started ringing. Mark called first. Then Elaine. Then my niece. I didn't answer. Finally, I received a text from Mark. Why are you doing this to us? I stared at that message for a long time. Doing this to them. As if I had forced them to lie. As if I had asked them to forge my name. Angela warned me. They'll try to flip the story, she said. Make you look confused. Unstable. Greedy. She was right. Within days I heard rumors. That I'd lost my mind. That I'd agreed to the sale verbally. That I was ungrateful for their help. Then came the letter. Certified mail. They were countersuing. Claiming I had authorized everything and was now trying to reverse it out of spite. Angela just smiled when she read it. Good, she said. Now we get discovery. That's when the truth started cracking open. Hospital records showed exactly how medicated I was. Nurses' notes documented confusion, slurred speech, limited motor control. One nurse even wrote, "Patient declined to sign documents. Appeared distressed." That note alone was gold. Then there was the attorney. The one who had walked into my hospital room like he owned it. Angela subpoenaed him. Turns out, he wasn't a neutral third party. He'd been hired by the buyer. And the buyer? A development company partially owned by Elaine's cousin. That connection hadn't been disclosed anywhere. Conflict of interest. More cracks. Then came the handwriting expert. He studied my real signature from years of documents, tax forms, deeds, bank records. Then compared it to the hospital signature. He didn't hesitate. "This is a simulation," he said. "Someone copied his signature. Slowly. Carefully. But imperfectly. The pressure points were wrong. The stroke order off. The hesitation marks unnatural. In plain terms, it was fake." The day Angela showed me that report, I sat in my car and cried. Not because of the land. Because of the realization that my own brother had watched someone forge my name. And said nothing. Court came faster than I expected. Walking into that courtroom felt heavier than any hospital bed. Mark sat across from me. Wouldn't meet my eyes. Elaine stared straight ahead, jaw tight, like this was an inconvenience, not a betrayal. Their lawyer painted a clean picture. A concerned family. A sick man. A necessary decision. Then Angela stood. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't dramatize. She let facts do the talking. Medical records. Nurse testimony. The missing final authorization. The forged signature. The undisclosed family connection to the buyer. I watched the judge's face change. Slowly. Carefully. Then came the moment I didn't expect. The judge turned to Mark. "Did you witness your brother sign this document?" Mark swallowed. "Yes," he said. Angela didn't react. She simply asked, "Under oath?" Mark hesitated. The room was silent. "I believe so," he said. Angela nodded. Then called the nurse to the stand. The same nurse who wrote that note. She looked Mark straight in the eye. "I was in the room," she said. "He did not sign. He refused. That was it." Mark's shoulders slumped. Elaine whispered something to their lawyer. The judge called a recess. Outside the courtroom, Mark finally approached me. "Rob, we were just trying to help," he said. I looked at him, really looked at him. "You tried to help yourselves," I said quietly. "And you almost buried me to do it." When court resumed, the ruling was clear. The sale was void. The land was mine. And the case was being referred for further investigation. Fraud. Exploitation. Forgery. As I walked out of that courthouse, the sun hit my face in a way I hadn't felt in months. I had my land back. But something else was gone forever. Trust. And what I learned next. About what they did with the money they thought they'd already won. Made the betrayal even deeper. I thought it was over. The judge's words still echoed in my head, sale voided, property restored. For weeks, that felt like enough. I went back to the land. Not to work it. Not yet. I just walked it. Slowly. Carefully. Like a man relearning how to trust the ground beneath his feet. The oak tree was still there. The fence line still crooked in the same places my father had patched 100 times. The small shed where I kept tools I hadn't touched since before the stroke. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt watched. A week later, Angela called me. "Rob," she said, "we found something else." Her tone told me this wasn't good news. The development company had already moved money. A lot of it. Escrow deposits. Consulting fees. Pre-sale agreements. Money that never should have been touched. But somehow had been. "And here's the part you won't like," she added. Your brother and his wife received advance distributions. I sat down. How much? She told me the number. It was more than I'd ever had in my bank account at one time. They'd spent it too. New car. Credit cards paid off. A down payment on a condo in Elaine's sister's name. All based on a sale that wasn't legal. They acted like it was already theirs. I said. That's exactly how fraud works, Angela replied. The investigation moved quietly at first. Too quietly. Weeks passed. Mark didn't call. Elaine didn't text. Then one afternoon, I noticed tire tracks near the back edge of my property. Fresh ones. I hadn't authorized anyone to be there. The next day, a man in a reflective vest knocked on my door. Utility survey, he said. Just checking boundaries. I called Angela immediately. Within hours, she confirmed it. The development company was still acting like the land would eventually be theirs. They were betting I'd get tired. That I'd settle. That I'd walk away. That's when Angela made a move I didn't expect. She filed a civil suit. Not just to stop them, but to recover damages. Lost use. Emotional distress. Legal costs. And she named names. Mark. Elaine. The attorney. The buyer. When Mark found out, he finally came to see me. He showed up unannounced, standing on my porch like a stranger. He looked older. Thinner. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped outside. We didn't hug. I didn't think it would go this far, he said. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't think. He stared at the ground. She said it was legal, he muttered. She? I asked. Elaine. There it was. Not an apology. A deflection. She said you wouldn't need the land anymore, he continued. That it was just sitting there. That this would help everyone. Including her. Including him. Not me. You watched someone forge my name, I said. And you stayed quiet. His voice cracked. I was scared. So was I said. I was scared I was dying. He had no answer for that. He left without saying goodbye. A month later, the criminal charges were announced. Forgery. Conspiracy. Exploitation of an incapacitated adult. Elaine's attorney tried to delay everything. Medical evaluations. Procedural motions. Technical nonsense. But evidence has weight. And this case had plenty. The handwriting expert testified again. The nurse returned. Bank records traced the money. Then something unexpected happened. Elaine turned on Mark. She claimed he'd pressured her. That he'd told her I'd already agreed. That she'd only handled paperwork. Mark's lawyer fired back, claiming Elaine had orchestrated everything. Watching them tear each other apart was sobering. These were the people who once sat at my table on holidays. Now they couldn't even agree on who betrayed me first. During one hearing, the judge asked me if I wanted to make a statement. I hadn't planned to. But I stood anyway. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came here because I almost lost my life. And then almost lost everything I worked for, to the people I trusted most. I looked directly at Mark. I would have helped you, I said, if you just asked. The courtroom was silent. The judge sentenced the attorney first. Disbarment proceedings. Fines. Then Elaine. Probation. Restitution. A permanent record she couldn't smile her way out of. Mark's case was continued. Family made it complicated. After everything, Angela asked me something I hadn't considered. What do you want to do with the land now? I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to sell it. Walk away. Erase the memories. But another part of me, the stubborn part, refused. I'm keeping it, I said. At least for now. I started making changes. I put the property into a trust. Updated my will. Named an independent trustee. No more assumptions. No more blind trust. One afternoon, as I stood by the oak tree, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think you won? This isn't over. I showed it to Angela. She didn't look surprised. They're desperate, she said. And desperate people make mistakes. She was right. Because what happened next? The final move they tried to make was the thing that sealed everything. And cost them more than they ever imagined. The message stayed on my phone longer than it should have. You think you won? This isn't over. No name. No number I recognized. For the first time since the court ruling, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, not the medical kind, but the kind that comes from knowing someone still thinks they can take something from you. Angela told me not to respond. Silence makes people reckless, she said. Let them hang themselves. She was right. 2 nights later, Walter called me. Rob, he said quietly, there's a truck parked near the back fence. Been there a while. Lights off. I grabbed my jacket and drove over. The moon was high, bright enough to see tire tracks again, deeper this time. Someone had cut part of the old wire fence. Not carefully. Rough. Rushed. They weren't surveying anymore. They were trying to claim. I called the sheriff. By the time deputies arrived, the truck was gone. But they found something left behind. A folder. Inside were printed maps of my land, highlighted sections, notes in the margins. Proposed access roads. Utility lines. Lot divisions. One note stood out. If Hale refuses, proceed anyway. He'll fold. Angela smiled when she saw it. That, she said, tapping the page, is intent. Things moved fast after that. Search warrants. Subpoenas. The development company's offices were visited. Emails seized. Financial records pulled. And buried in a thread marked final option was everything. They had planned to pressure me until I sold. Delay me in court. Drain me financially. And if that didn't work, they discussed declaring the land abandoned, claiming I was medically unfit to manage it, putting it into receivership. All without telling me. All legal words hiding an illegal plan. One email chilled me. Family cooperation makes this easier. Angela looked at me. They never stopped, she said. They just changed tactics. Then came the knock on my door. Elaine. She looked nothing like the woman who used to host family dinners. Her hair was pulled back tight. Eyes red. Hands shaking. I need to talk to you, she said. Every part of me wanted to shut the door. But curiosity won. We sat at opposite ends of the table. She didn't waste time. They're turning on me, she said. The company. The attorney. Even Mark. I said nothing. They're saying I planned everything, she continued. That I manipulated everyone. And did you? I asked. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then finally whispered. I thought you'd never come back from the hospital. There it was. The truth. I thought I was helping my family, she said. And I thought you were already gone. I leaned back. You buried me while I was still breathing, I said. Tears ran down her face. They're going to prison, she said. They told me if I testify against you, say you agreed, they'll protect me. I laughed softly. They already tried that, I said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. Everything, she said. Emails. Calls. Instructions. Forged drafts. Angela listened to the recording later that night. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a collapse. Elaine's testimony broke the company's defense. The attorney cut a deal to save himself. Executives resigned. And Mark? Mark was arrested 2 weeks later. Watching your own brother in handcuffs does something to you. I didn't feel victory. I felt tired. During the final hearing, the judge asked me one last time if I wanted to address the court. I stood. My family thought this land was just dirt, I said. But it held my life. My past. My future. I paused. And while I was fighting to survive, they were planning how to profit from my absence. The judge nodded. Sentencing followed. Heavy. Public. Permanent. After everything, I went back to the land one more time. Not to walk it this time. To sit. Under the oak tree. The same one my father planted when I was a boy. I realized something then. The land didn't save me. That one missing signature did. Because it proves something important. That even when your body is weak, your instincts can still protect you. And the final decision I made after all of this, the choice that surprised everyone, was still ahead. Because justice isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes, it's the beginning of something better. People assume that when the court is done, when the handcuffs click, when the papers are stamped and filed, that's where a story ends. For me, that's where the noise finally stopped. The phone calls slowed. The letters stopped coming. No more lawyers speaking in careful tones. Just silence. I spent weeks on the land without doing much of anything. No fixing. No planning. Just sitting on the porch in the mornings, coffee going cold in my hands, listening to the wind move through trees my father planted before I ever learned his name. Angela checked in once. Everything's settled, she said. Titles are clean. Trust is active. No one can touch it without your say. I thanked her. Then she asked the question everyone had been asking me. So, what now? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies. And I didn't want the land to become a symbol of bitterness. I wanted it to mean something again. Mark tried to reach out from jail. A handwritten letter. He said he was sorry. Said he'd let fear make decisions for him. Said Elaine convinced him it was just business. I read it once. Then I folded it carefully and put it away. Some wounds don't need reopening. They need distance. Elaine's message came through her lawyer. She wanted forgiveness. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. One afternoon, Walter came by with a 6-pack and 2 folding chairs. We sat near the oak tree. You ever think about selling now that it's worth a fortune? He asked. I smiled. Every day, I said. And every day I decide not to. Instead, I did something no one expected. I donated a portion of the land. Not to family. Not to developers. To a local rehabilitation center. Stroke recovery. Physical therapy. People learning how to use their hands again. How to trust their bodies again. I set aside acreage for walking paths. Quiet space. A place to heal. The rest stayed mine. Not as an asset. As an anchor. At the dedication ceremony, they asked me to say a few words. I almost declined. But then I stood there, looking at faces that reminded me of myself months earlier, scared, fragile, unsure if life had already passed them by. And I said this. I almost lost everything while I was lying in a hospital bed. Not to strangers. To people who shared my last name. The crowd was silent. But I'm standing here because one moment of hesitation, one instinct, one missing signature, saved my life outside that hospital. I paused. If you're listening to this and you're in a weak moment, physically, emotionally, financially, remember this. You are still allowed to say no. Applause came slowly. Then fully. That night, alone again under the oak tree, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the stroke. Peace. Not because I won. But because I chose what came next. My family thought my life was something they could sign away. They were wrong. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refused to put your name on a lie. And that one decision, that single missing signature, didn't just save my land? It saved me.